What is up, my friends? Jesse here, winemaker of 20 plus years and certified sommelier. In today's video, I'm going to go over the first winemaking job that I ever had and kind of how I landed it. Um, it was in St. James, Missouri, Ferrigno Winery, probably 500 to 1,000 case uh, winery. And growing up, there really wasn't wine in my house. It was raised by a single mother, so she really didn't drink at all in the house, so I didn't really have any sort of wine exposure. And it was Missouri as well, which isn't necessarily built into the culture there, I guess you could say. So how I was kind of exposed to Frino and wine, and I was in college. I was actually going to college in Rolla, Missouri, which is probably 20 minutes from St. James. St. James is probably the second largest wine growing region in Missouri. That's maybe changed since I moved around. Uh, Augusta is probably the largest, and it's closer to St. Louis. And Augusta is the first AVA in America ever, and it happens to be in Missouri. So St. James was like kind of German community that's kind of who started the industry there way back before Prohibition. There was wine and some fairly large wineries. Anyways, so I'm in college. I'm actually in a fraternity at the time. This is 20 plus years ago, like about 23 years ago at this time. Uh, and I DD for some guys in my frat house, and they wanted to go out to Ferrigno's. I'd never heard of it. Turns out that it's a winery. It's kind of in this old barn um, building, I guess is what you call it. They do like a wine tasting below. I thought was kind of interesting. The guy behind the counter was kind of interesting. Then they bought some bottles and they went up top, and up top it was kind of like an open top area with some picnic tables and it overlooked vines. And I had never seen grapevines. I was raised on a farm, so I did have some interest in agricultural and plants. My mom always had a lot of plants around the house. So, anyways, I was like, it seems like a really cool place. I didn't really have a job at the time. Um, Went back to the frat house eventually, and then I just thought about that and the place, and it just for a couple nights, a couple weeks, a couple months, it just sat in my brain. And I was like, man, that seems like a job that I'd like to work out there. So I ended up driving back out there, um, finding the owner, Richard Ferrigno. He started the winery with his wife, Susan Ferrigno. I don't know Susan's maiden name. Uh, Richard's passed away at this point in time, and that's part of why I wanted to capture this is try to capture some history around the Missouri wine scene. He passed away about 2 years ago, and this is 2024 right now. Um, so it was the fifth winery ever in Missouri to give you some scope. And then when I was there, I forget how long the winery had been there. It was, I think, around 15 years. I should have done a little more research on that before I hit record. But this is going to be one of my first videos to my channel, so I'll probably end up redoing this video or talking more about it down the line. And he basically told me that he didn't need help. He had all the help that he wanted. I was just like, hey, I'll mow the lawn. It looks like it needs to be mowed. I think I saw a lawnmower out there. And I just try to be like persistent, uh, like if he had anything for me to do, I would basically do it. And he was like, okay, like he could see that I was kind of being persistent. So he was like, actually, if you want, I need help when harvest comes, picking grapes. And he was like, well, let me give me your email. I'll put you on the email list. Let me get your phone number. No social media or anything back then. So you basically had to communicate through email or a phone. I didn't even have a cell phone at the time, so the phone number was to the frat house. And then like if I took a call at the frat house, there was like two phones on each floor. So there was like six phones for like 60 people and only one line. So anyways, I digress. So I ended up bugging him like in the middle of summer because I stayed for summer school. He was like, "Yeah, I don't. Harvest is coming on XYZ date." He sent me an email around that time, and then basically was like, because he would try to get like a group of people to pick grapes to harvest, and they would typically start pretty early, which wasn't something for me as a college student that I was used to doing. So I think we'd start at like 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. Um, I can't remember what the first grape varietal was that I picked for him, but I showed up. I picked grapes for. I think we would do it for like 3 to 4 hours at a time, and you get paid per bin. A bin was those yellow bins that you still see now, like 40 pounds. Um, and I can't remember how long it would take you to pick one of those, and but you would get paid per bin. So if you're really really slow, you would actually make less than minimum wage, but you had to be really slow for that to be the case. So I think it was like $1.50 or $2 a bin. Minimum wage back then was like $5. So he saw that I showed up. He was like, "Here's the next picking date. Here's the next picking date," and I just continued to show up. I think there was a couple times, like say out of the first 10 times, there was 2 times I couldn't because of prior obligations, and then just every time I'd be willing to stay the whole entire time. If you've ever picked grapes by hand, it's sometimes hard to find hand crews, especially in rural Missouri. So then I would always stay as long as he needed me to, and then I just would continue to ask, like, "Hey, is there anything else I can do for you, like before I leave for the day?" So then he eventually let me, like, once the grapes were picked, someone would have to go around with a tractor and load them up on the back of the like a trailer. So he eventually let me start helping doing that. Then he found out that I had some ag experience, grew up on a farm. So I was eventually able to drive the tractor, a very basic tractor. And then I would start to be able to help him unload the bins or the grapes into kind of the cellar area. And then eventually, we're talking probably, I don't know, week, a month of me doing this. Weighing the bins, you do weights on each and every one, and then you would make a tally of the. You get a number when you would pick, and you would put your number in the bin, and then so you really couldn't get paid until the next day until you had tallied how much. Uh, I eventually got to start helping them like unload the grapes, and then eventually got to help them start like run the grapes through the crusher and stemmer, and then washing the bins, and probably it just like you get wet. It was hot, sticky, so I think the fact that I just kind of stuck with it, and uh, so I did that for kind of the first, basically that harvest. I stuck with it, and so I was probably out there, I don't know, 30 times or something like that. And then from there, he would, my communications with him was, he would do events, is the best way to call it. A lot of times it was just dinners. And so he would need some sort of busters or waiters, basically just the people that take the food out, and then bring the bag and then do the dishes. He had another guy at the time that was helping him do a lot of that. That worked at the college or was going to college as well. So I just stuck with that whenever he needed that help. I would go there and do that. Um, and then I eventually started to help with a little bit with food prep. And then it came around, and we stayed in communication. And he basically told me like, if you, I really need the most help during the summer. And I'm like, cool. Like, I actually do a class in the summer. I'm here like for wherever you need me. And then that's when I started coming out and doing just vineyard work for them. Mostly just hand work, sometimes with a hoe and stuff like that. And I started probably working, I don't know, 10 to 15 hours a week for them at the beginning. It would just be like desuckering the vine, um, shoot thinning, planting some new vines. He had a large garden. I would kind of help him with that as well. Just basically stuff that he would kind of fall behind on as like a one man show. I would come out there. And that eventually got up to probably 20, 25 hours a week the first year. And then in that fall is really when he started to let me help out in the cellar a lot more. Just the trust level had built a lot since the summer was. You're spending 20 hours a week with someone. It's like anything else. You're going to build some trust. And then that year went by, and I was able to help with hooking up pumps, and he needed bottling would be another thing they would need a lot of help for. At least like two guys, and then um, it turned out where he kind of would trust my opinion on like having someone else come out. Like if he needed two or three people, I'd be like, oh, I can get someone from that frat house to come out that would need some money and do the work. And then he would like some folks, and other folks just weren't as good as workers. So that's where I started to get my taste of what was going on in the cellar. And then I stayed another summer, worked another harvest with them. And at that point, I was kind of his right hand man. I was basically there for all of his events, all the picking days. The summers I was working 30, 40 hours a week, mostly vineyard work. So mostly what I did for him, I'd say throughout my 3+ years there was vineyard work, and cellar work was probably 20% of the work. I'd clean some tanks, help with transfers and stuff like that, and then I think where the romance of my computer screen just turned off, so I lost some of the lighting. It was I didn't realize that was going to happen. Kind of a new setup for me here. Is during harvest is when a lot of people fall into the bug of really liking winemaking. You smell the fermenting fruit, um, and then I started drinking more wine, and then my buddies were kind of more interested in it. We would start buying cheap bottles of wine from Walmart, trying to figure out what was good, what wasn't good. We'd just buy like $5 bottles, and I don't know, we'd try like eight, and we'd have our favorite $5 bottle that we would have over the course of like 2 months and try to keep track. We drank a lot of Franzia, White Chablis, I think was our favorite 5 liter boxed wine back then. That was stuff we could afford as college kids, and to actually be drinking wine as college kids in Missouri, I think was pretty rare. Um, and then I think like wine wise, like actually tasting and drinking wine is like how I felt kind of like is he had like a Vignoles, which is a popular grape and wine in Missouri. It's a French hybrid. Most people make it sweet. He was one of the few people in the state that made it dry, which was cool. It's kind of a floral aromatic white grape. If you're in Missouri and you can find a dry one, I highly recommend it. They make a late harvest wine out of it too, which can be really really delicious in other states as well. But it's like 3 or 4 years old. It was something he had pulled out of the cellar. He wasn't sure if it was still good. I can remember having that wine and it just tasted like apricots to me, like dried apricots. And it was something like that really clicked there on the wine drinking side. Like this is crazy because I had had the fresh bottles, but I would help him pour wine in the tasting room too. That was as his trust level in me built up. I was allowed to do certain other things, like the tasting room. There's a cash flow piece of that, so there's a little more trust there. So that was probably the first wine that I tasted that really made me it flipped my switch on drinking wine, and that was a 2001 Vignoles from Ferrigno, so obviously. Uh, so Richard was always a cool dude to me. Um, he liked to go by Dick. Uh, I think that was just an older guy thing. Is that there might have been so many Richards that some people just went by Dick and some people went by Richard. I always thought it was kind of a funny, like as a younger kid, like I was 20 when I first started there, and that was another reason I couldn't help him with in the tasting room right away. That wasn't 21, but 20, 21, 22, 23 year old, just calling someone Dick was kind of different. And probably the funniest times is like we're working on this like 12-acre ranch farm, and sometimes it would just be him and I, and you don't have cell phones, and so kind of everyone's doing different tasks, and I would have the task I'm working on, he would have the task that he's working on, and like to try to get his attention, like, hey, I need something else to do, or just need his help with something, you'd have to like yell, like, hey, Dick, like, where are you? It was just uh, chuckle to yourself at those moments. So this is a longer form video. Obviously, I'm gonna do more of these going forward. Share like my experience getting my certification as sommelier, and then just kind of how I've built my career over the last 20 years. I work for one of the top 10 largest wineries now. I'm a winemaker there. Been there for close to 10 years, but then I bounced around a lot of different places. But I definitely got my start at Ferrigno's in Missouri, and I definitely appreciate Richard giving me the chance there. And that was essentially my building block. I got a degree in economics, so then I tried to talk with Richard about how to take the next leap, and we'll probably get into that in another video. And I'll definitely share some other stories about the 3+ years that I worked there. But want to start to try to build this channel, so I wanted to get that video out there. And that's it. Subscribe if you want to see more. Like the video, and that lets me know that you like to see the content, and I'll keep at it. Later.